Hello. Okay. It lives inside. I was quite looking forward to checking this out because I kind of liked what I was seeing from the trailers. This looked like it could be quite an effective horror film, and it had very kind of insidious vibes with a synopsis that kind of reminded me a little bit of The Babadook. So the film follows an Indian American teenager struggling with her cultural identity. She has a falling out with her former best friend and, in the process, unwittingly releases a demonic entity that grows stronger by feeding on her loneliness. The movie's directed by a Bishal Dutta in his directorial debut, and what they do get right here in this film is the horror. This film has some really effective, creepy horror moments, and I just really dug the way in which a lot of these moments were shot and how the camera focuses on certain objects, and at the same time, what they do with the camera in this film is they kind of just linger, for example, on a certain object. It might be a door, it might be a wall, but it forces us to use our imagination to sort of, and kind of really kind of look to see, are we seeing something there? So it makes you kind of question, can you see something? You know, is there something there? And I loved that about this film. I just loved how Bishal used the camera throughout this movie in those moments. And it's not just the use of the camera, but it's also the sound design and the lighting that really helps elevate those moments of creepiness. Like the colour palette, there's a lot of these blacks and dark greys which sort of really inject this sense of dread throughout the movie. And then when it comes to the entity's layer, you could say, there's a lot of these kind of dark oranges and reds, and it's the use of colours, these certain colours within these moments that really kind of help create this hell-like environment, this hell-like setting, and it's all done through the use of lighting, the colour palette, and so the sound design, a gorgeous sound design which really sort of helps add to the creepiness and the atmosphere, with a stunning score by Wesley Hughes. I really dug the score, and it also sort of helps add to the horror and allows the horror within this film to be really effective. There are some really creepy moments, and there's a lot of moments within this film that we've seen before so many times in so many other horror films. Very cliched, you got your classic horror tropes, but with this particular film, it was just in those moments, it was the way in which they played out, the way in which they were shot, how the camera focuses on certain objects and moments and sort of certain characters, and sort of that combined with the cinematography, the lighting and the sound design. Yes, we've seen it before, but it was so fucking effective. Like, there are moments that gave me chills, and I was really enjoying this film during those moments of tension and creepiness and just those moments of horror. And just going back to sound design for a moment, I just really liked how they utilized sound within these moments of horror. It really did help elevate the creepiness within these scenes, and just how they used it. It was almost like you were being sucked into this hell-like nightmare, like an actual living nightmare. And it's just how they used the sound. At the screening that I was in, at the showing, I felt like it was making really good use of the surround sound system, and you would hear these kind of whispers and voices all around you, and I just thought it was incredibly effective. It added so much to these moments of horror. So for me personally, when it comes to the horror, they nail it, and that's all down to how those moments of horror is brought to life, how they're crafted through the use of lighting, sound design, the use of the camera. But what lets this film down for me, unfortunately, it's all that connective tissue between those moments. It's how these characters are written and the story. I just did not care for these characters, and I felt a lot of that was down to the writing. I felt like they lose focus on a lot of these characters' relationships. For example, the relationship with Sam, our lead, and Tamira, who used to be our best friend, we don't really get much insight into the history of that relationship and how it evolved and where these characters both are. Like, we get a basic understanding of where they're at currently within this story, but we don't see how they get there, and that, along with the writing, just really sort of fails to add any emotional weight to this relationship. I just really struggled to care about these two characters' relationship, and for me, for this story to have truly worked, I feel like we really needed to care about this relationship between Sam and Tamira. I feel like that's where the heart was, and that's where the focus needed to be. There was zero dynamic or development between Sam and her mother and her father. There was just nothing there for me to really care about this family unit, and I feel a lot of that is down to the writing. There's this one scene where they sat around a table, and the only way I can describe it was very soap opera, like an episode of Coronation Street or EastEnders over here in the UK. But that's how the writing came across. It was just very shallow, very hollow relationships, and there was just not a lot of... Nothing really felt natural or organic when it came to these characters' relationships, whether it be with a past friend or Sam's mother and father. And so as a result, this film ended up becoming quite a frustrating experience, because those elements of horror were so effective. But for this film, for this story to have truly worked, you really needed to care about these characters and their journeys. And I just felt like they really lost focus on those characters' journeys and certain aspects of their stories. I think it needed a lot more focus with the relationship between Sam and Tamira and with her family, but I just felt like that really got lost somehow. And so this was a film that I liked in part due to how the horror was crafted, but ended up becoming so damn fucking frustrating because I just really couldn't emotionally care for the characters. But I liked what they were doing. You've got Sam struggling with her identity. The film explores themes of loneliness, depression and alienation. This should have been a very compelling, deep, emotional experience, and something that I was, from the trailers, expecting something along the lines of Insidious and Babadook. And it's kind of there, but it just fails to really bring that to life and for it to really kind of come alive, you could say. So it's really, really unfortunate, because you can see what they're doing, but it just sort of fails to come together. For the first 2 acts of the film, you only really see the entity, this creature, as sort of like a shadow with these 2 kind of white eyes, and it's creepy as fuck, and how they utilize it in some of these scenes, whether it be a woman looking into a mirror and just turning lights off, even just using a torch and shining it at a camera. Little things like that they did were just so effective in creating that kind of creepy atmosphere, and I really dug it. And so you do get to see more of this entity within the third act, but you get a lot of close-up shots of it, and I really like that. It takes away from the horror if you see too much of what it is that's trying to get you. And so the way they use the camera within the third act, where you do see more of this entity, this creature, I just think it was really effective. Like I said, the problem with this movie wasn't the horror. It was the characters and their stories, and I feel like that's where this film really kind of struggled. So yeah, there are my thoughts on It Lives Inside. I do recommend it. When it comes to the horror aspect, I highly recommend this movie. But I think for a lot of people, myself included, it's a frustrating experience, because there is a lot of what could have been. You see a lot there within the story with these characters that are interesting, but it's how they develop these characters and their journeys was where they really fail. And I think a lot of that is with the writing and just how they lose focus, I feel, on what is important within this story when it comes to these relationships. So yeah, they are my thoughts on It Lives Inside, and I will be giving It Lives Inside a 6.5 out of 10. So yeah, What did you guys think? Have you seen It Lives Inside yet? Please let me know below in the comments and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. If you want to see future reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. My next review will be for Five Nights at Freddy's. That releases here in the UK tomorrow. I'm looking forward to checking it out. So yeah, thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.